Jeremiah, the first chapter. Okay. And it says, the word of the Lord came to him in the 13th year of the reign of Josiah, son of Ammon, king of Judah. And it tells all of that. And it says in verse 4, A64, the word of the Lord, come get this good word. The word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as prophet to the nations. Alas, I said, I do not know how to speak. I'm too young. But the Lord said to me, do not say I'm too young. You must go to everyone I send to you and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will deliver you. So he reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms. And I'm going to stop right there. See, I have put my words into your mouth. Ashe. There's another scripture I was talking to my children about. Ashe to that. Did you get something? Ashe to that. Okay. Now let me read this next one. This is Luke 17 and 14. But let me get to the full chapter because y'all know I love context. Should I read the whole thing or get to the scripture? First I'm going to read the scripture, then I'm going to see what y'all say. Okay, so this is after Jesus healed the lepers. It says, and he was demanded of the Pharisees when the kingdom of God should come. He answered them and said, the kingdom of God cometh not with observation. Neither shall they say, lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. Greetings, beside. The kingdom of God is within you. Where is the kingdom of God? So let me go to this one. This next one here. Come on. That's 36. Okay, so the scene is Jesus is before Pontius Pilate because they are trying to crucify. And so Pilate's, let me get to his question. Pilate then went back inside the palace and summoned Jesus and asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Is that your own idea, Jesus asked, or did others talk to you about me? Because there's a difference between what you take from other people and what you know to be true, right? Am I a Jew? Pilate replied, your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it that you have done? Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place. So the kingdom of heaven is within you. That's what Jesus said. And then he says to Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is within you. That's the consciousness. That's the frequency. That's the vibration within you. So a lot of times, right, we are looking outside. Because this is what I was explaining to my middle son. We were talking about spirituality and such. And I said, for some people, religion is a path to the God within. So, first, sometimes you need to see God as outside of you. And you need to follow rituals and ceremonies and protocols, and you need to receive the remembrance within you. So, for some people, religion, specifically Christianity, but it could be Ifa, it could be whatever, is a bridge to the divine, because that was the point of it anyway. It's a bridge to the divine. But eventually, if you keep searching enough, you will realize that it's all within. But the outer religion, spirituality, and systems helps you to stay connected, because let's be honest, when the cares of life start coming, when you start getting super busy, when your mind gets clouded with distractions and such, you begin to lose the remembrance. You begin to lose touch with it, I should say. It's still there. You become unaware. It slides into your unconsciousness. And so religion and rituals and such will keep it at the forefront for you. That's the purpose of it. Okay? It's a bridge. It's a remembrance. So there was a time where I did altar work every single day, right? And it was effective. But what the altar work was doing was keeping the power, keeping the intention active, so that the cares of life could not come and wash it away. Because not only was it operating in my subconscious, it was also operating in my consciousness. If you've ever done a prayer or an intention, and let's say you've done it with some type of incense, the smoke, right, being released into the ethers ministers to your eyes, ministers to your smell, ministers to your ears, music, right? So sometimes we want to come into alignment spiritually, and it might be difficult to do. You might sit there and try to meditate, and you're not quite there, so you don't quite connect the way that you want to. But you might be able to put a song on and sit and focus on the song. When the experience is being generated in your consciousness, it aligns with what is in your subconscious. So sometimes people say it doesn't take all of that. It doesn't, because you are the altar, you are the church, you are the vessel. But there are times where it's a tool, it's useful. But I don't want you to ever convince the tool for something you need. Okay? And that's why it's important not to become dependent on the tools. Because if you can't buy the tool, if you can't use the tool, right? If the tool changes, because they do change, what do you have? People say, well, I need to be near water. I need to be near the desert. I need to be near nature. But what if you can't go there? You're going to sit there and just long for the time where you can? No, we're operating in more mastery than that. We are able to contact nature within. The kingdom is within. You can contact nature within. You can contact God within. So let me get, I'm not going to get the book. I'm just going to tell you real quick. So my client purchased me this book called Beyond Darwin by Dr. Lipton. He's the person who wrote The Biology of Belief. So anyway, within the book, they did this experiment where they took some of a scientist's blood and put it under the microscope to live stream the movement and behavior. Okay? And then they put the scientists on a live stream with the microscope on a split screen. Does that make sense? So now the microscope with the scientist's blood and the scientists are both live on a split screen. So far, so good. And so the microscope was like 500 miles away. It could have been 700. I don't remember. But it wasn't close to the person. Let's say 500 miles away. When the scientists began to experience heightened emotions, the cells on the screen responded. They were moving too. When the scientists on the screen experienced heightened emotions, there was movement, corresponding movement in the cells on the screen. So what that's saying to me is your consciousness is not this body. Your consciousness is something streaming. It's a broadcast. So when we say that the kingdom of heaven is within, we don't mean inside your body. We mean part of you. But the symbolism of within is trying to let you know that it's not outside. But what we're really saying is that the kingdom of heaven, you are part of it and it is a part of you. So it's not something to look within, but what happens is we have to close our eyes and our ears to hone in on it. And that's why we have this idea of within. But you are actually not just this body. You're actually extending some feet outside the body if you talk about your subtle bodies and ethereal bodies, right? So the kingdom of heaven being within is not a physical kingdom. It's not a sensory kingdom. It's not an energy that is bound by it. Your consciousness is a streaming broadcast, and that's how we get these ideas of telepathy. How does that happen? It happens because your consciousness is streaming. It's broadcasting. And so imagine, now follow me, imagine what you're broadcasting. Well, look around and see what is latching on to your broadcast. What are you bringing in? Not only what are you bringing in, but what are you holding there? And how are you holding it in your consciousness now? We experience it in the realm of the physical energy. So this is not just about what you attract, because you're going to attract a lot of things. A lot of things are going to see you as beautiful. A lot of things and people are going to see you as desirable. So it's not just about what you're attracting, but it's what you vibrate in resonance with when it comes. For example, you have many different vibrations. You may have, let's talk about me. I'm going to make this personal. So I have a very grounded vibration, a very sensical vibration. I have a lot of earth in my elemental nature. I also have a lot of metal. So that provides a solid feeling when people come in contact with me. Now, some people think that solid feeling is desirable. They want to be around it. Some people think it's desirable, but when they start bumping up against the solidarity of it, they start making it a problem, right? So I have attracted all of that. I've attracted people who also have solidarity, and maybe we build something together. I've been able to attract all of that, right? But the resonance determines what stays and what goes. The resonance. Because if you're not resonating, it's only so far they can stay in your sphere. Now, you may feel that lack of resonance or dissonance and try to keep them around. You may. I've tried to do that. But they cannot stay. They must go. And that's where the true vibration comes in, where you can tell what the resonance really is. And that's why alignment is not the end all be all, because you draw some aligned things and aligned people. Some people align with how solid and grounded I feel. But then when they get into that alignment, the vibration is not resonant, it's dissonant. Right? So you need to know that about yourself as well. It's not really what you're attracting. Don't look around being, why did I attract this? Why? A lot of things and a lot of people are going to be attracted to you because you are attractive. You are electromagnetic. But what are you entertaining? What are you trying to keep around? What resonance are you ignoring, right? Is there a resonance? This comes across in conversation. You may meet someone and you may have really good conversation. And you might start saying, oh yes, I really like this person. We have a lot in common. We do this, we do that, or whatever. That's alignment. And there's levels to alignment as well. They're talking the spiritual talk, you're feeling it. They're talking the psychological talk, you're feeling it. They're talking the metaphysical talk, you're feeling it. But when you start moving with them each day, you start discovering that the way you see the world is not resonant. This is the process of getting to know a person. You start discovering that the way they see spirituality is not resonant. You begin to see the way their social life is set up is not resonant. Or it is, right? So I think it's important for us to take all of this into account as we're going about this world, forming partnerships and friendships and connections and collaborations. Yes, we are aligned here. Now, what is the resonance, right? So let me read something really quick. What y'all think about this? Does it hit you as true or something to think about? I think I want to look at this one. It resonates, it makes sense. What do y'all think about the broadcast where the scientist was having the experience and the cells were responding? Thank you. So can we look at some areas of resonance? I'm going to read from my coach's book here. It says the 9 divisions of self as resonance zones. I've talked about this a lot in my private community already. So if you're there, you already heard this, but it's good to refresh. All right. So each division of self vibrates as a unique tuning fork in relationships. Maintaining resonance means consciously aligning these zones so that your frequencies harmonize rather than clash. Each division of self has a template for how to maintain resonance and contrast, revealing what occurs when out of tune. That's when you're in the shadow frequency of the relationship. We're talking about the connection. Some people, let me say this before I move on. So some people are so used to the shadow dominating their relationships that they think that relationships, it's normal for struggle. It's normal to have problems. It's normal. It is normal for them because they're used to the shadow dominating their their connections and relational areas. They're used to that. And so if you live in the shadow frequency and it's normal to you, then you're going to have a lot more tolerance than a person who is either used to the beneficial qualities operating in the connection or someone who's looking to grow in that area. Does that make sense? So when you say it's normal for problems, it's normal for conflict, arguments are normal, you are normalized in the shadow dominating your connections. That is normal in the shadow realm. Does that make sense? So now let's look at how this shadow realm operates. Okay. So let's look at one of the divisions of self, the emotional self. In the emotional self, you maintain resonance by attuning to emotional honesty, presence, listen, and respond with empathy. When out of tune, there's hyper reactivity, mood dependency, irrationality, emotional withdrawal, emotional static. So if you think that's normal, that's because you're used to the shadow qualities of relationships. In your sensual self, you maintain resonance through shared sensory experiences, whether that's touch or senses of beauty, rhythm, nature, things like food, things that ground and harmonize you, right? So if you are in conflict in this area, then you would have to learn how to attune. See, most people, when they experience conflict, they want to keep talking about the conflict. That seems natural because they're used to the shadow quality dominating. But once you get a good understanding of the conflict, and the conflict, I teach universal truth, right? So we must submit the conflict to universal truth if you want to come out of shadow dominating connections. Now, if you want to base the conversation and the conflict on subjective truth and personal truth, that's where you get into the realm of the shadow, agree to disagree. People start saying, I'm not being heard. I'm not being heard. Right? And you're going to stay not being heard if you stay in the subjective realm. Because in the subjective realm, everybody has their truth and everybody wants to vouch for it. This is my truth. This is my experience. You hear things like that. Remember, in the Manomaya, what characterizes the Manomaya is the separation, right? And what rules the Manomaya? The ego, your sense of self as being conditioned, right? And also intellect. Ideals rule the Manomaya realm. You're going to stay in conflict with people, and it's going to be normal because that's what happens in the Manomaya. So when people normalize shadow relationships rather than loving relationships, this comes about in another idea. Well, in this relationship, there has to be a ton of forgiveness. That's a shadow dominant relationship. It's normal in the Manomaya, where you have to keep forgiving, and people find comfort there because you don't need to transcend. You just need to forgive. You need to have grace. People deserve chances. Nobody's perfect. We're all human. That's characteristic of the Manomaya realm. I'm saying that's true on the Manomaya. It is. I wouldn't even contest that it's not. It is true on that realm. It depends on what frequency you're used to operating on. Does that make sense? So when you examine a relationship or a particular connection, you got to ask yourself, is this shadow dominant in this relationship where we have to rely a lot on things to keep harmonizing, keep reharmonizing? And why are we coming out of harmony like this? Where are we not resonant? See, when you have the conflict, it's necessary for you to stop talking about the thing that happened, talk about the universal truth, talk about the layers under the reason that we keep coming out of harmony. Why do we keep coming into dissonance rather than resonance? That's what needs to be talked about. But the persons living on the Manomaya, they cannot, because that's beyond their mind. They want to talk about the ideal and the principle. And nobody can solve a problem for real on that level. Nobody can. Most people stay on the level of fussing about what was happening, where the ego came in, how they were hurt. You're not considering my feelings. You're not considering my experience. You're not, okay? But I'm telling you, if you want genuine attunement, real attunement, do we remember the definition of attunement? Because some people are not after attunement. They want you to validate their emotions, right? Or validate their experience because that's where they feel comfortable. But if you want true resolution on deep layers, you're going to have to go beyond that. And there are books written, libraries of books and studies on this. This is not my truth. This is not my opinion. Like, you have but to research. Metaphysical writers, psychological writers, spiritual writers, they all are saying the same thing. So how long are you going to vouch for it's normal and stay on the level of that when there's so much? You could Google, you could ask ChatGPT, how do I resolve conflict beyond the layer of the ego? ChatGPT will tell you. The same thing that the ancient sages will tell you, because it's bringing all of that information together. So at what point are you going to come off of the manomaya in your relationships? Like at what point will you? Will you? That's the question. Because some people watch me and they think, oh, she's very staunch. She's very strict. She's very whatever the she's very is, right? But one thing I know, right, is that the sages are not very that. And the psychologists are not very that. And the spiritualists and the metaphysicians, they all tell you that there's levels and layers to this. Your broadcast not only determines what comes to you, but your true broadcast determines what you resonate with and what you keep around, what you tolerate, and what you entertain. Hey, intimate introvert. Okay, so let's continue. Do we remember the definition of attunement? And can you see why attunement cannot happen on the manomaya? Give me one reason why attunement cannot happen on the manomaya. If I'm talking to someone and I know that they cannot broadcast past the manomaya, it's only so much I'm going to say. There might be a lot to say, but it's only so much of it that I will say, because trying to speak from a different frequency to the manomaya is asking for disruption. It's asking for it. Attunement. Do we remember the definition of attunement? Let's read it. In energy-based healing modalities, it refers to hands-on or a personal practice focused on alignment and well-being. In harmony and alignment, it means bringing things into a harmonious, synchronized state, much like tuning a musical instrument. A characteristic of manomaya is separate, the I and the you. So how are you going to truly harmonize in a synchronized state like a tuning musical instrument on that layer? You can't. That's the layer of agree to disagree. That's the layer of, well, that's how you took it. That's the layer of subjective truth. That's the layer of ideals and philosophies. So if you want something spiritually harmonious on some of the more subtle planes, then you can't be on the manomaya, or in other words, in a shadow dominant relationship. It's not coming, because that's not the vibration. It would be a distortion. In relationships and parenting, it's the ability to feel felt by another person, creating security and closeness. Now, in childhood, it requires the parent, right, to transcend the ego to really understand the child's mechanisms. As adults, it operates differently, because some people want to bring a childlike way of being into adult relationships. So feeling felt by someone else means that you have to have resonance in the emotional realm. So let's read it. Okay, you have to have resonance, because sometimes you're trying to feel felt by someone you don't have resonance with and who doesn't have resonance with you. So in order to, and you can still harmonize, but in order to do that, you must go on a higher plane together. You must go on a higher plane together. That's the plane of universal truth, laws, principles, and really discuss what part is out of harmony. You would have to go there. Because otherwise, if you stay in the shadow dominant conversation, connection, commitment, ego where separate is the name of the game, then you're not going to have deep attunement because you can't achieve harmony there. So then you have to forgive a lot. You have to forget a lot. You have to overlook a lot. You have to say, oh, we're not human. We're all this and that. That's what you have to say. And you have to keep creating that because that's all you can create there. Is making sense? It doesn't matter how much, I say that it doesn't matter how much I say that relationships don't have to be struggle oriented. There's inevitably going to be someone who says, you're too idealistic. You think people ought to be perfect. You know, I've heard this, right? But that's the Manomaya speaking. That's like someone speaking. Imagine a store. I'm inside the store. They're outside the store. And they're screaming to me through the mirror, the window, and I'm screaming out to them. The partition will never let the true sound hit the ears. Right? So on the Manomaya, you have to protect the Manomaya things because you can't broadcast beyond that. So you have to say, this is normal, that is normal, or whatever. It's not normal overall, it's normal on the Manomaya. If you want to come higher or beyond, you would have to go into the wisdom sheath. You would have to come out of shadow domination or shadow dominant relationships. You would have to focus more on resonance on the energetic level. See, everybody has learned that when I was a child, my emotions were not important. And as an adult, my emotions are super important. And some people confuse emotions with irrationality. So they vouch for the irrationality while calling it their emotion. I think it's important to see that, right? Because the irrationality is going to make you cling to offense. It's going to make you cling to separateness. It's going to make you cling to, you can't hear me, nobody hears me, I'm not heard. That's the Manomaya. It makes you cling to that. And so in clinging, you got to develop stories about the outside world. So your stories reflect your inside world. And so from your inside world, you say people are, and you describe it. So unconsciously, you're beginning to set rules for your world and how it operates and how you see things. So you have to develop a narrative so you can keep clinging because you got to justify to the cling. Because if you were to submit that cling to higher planes and universal truth, it would not be true. It would fail miserably in the test of longevity and reason and such. And so your ego would have to be back in service again rather than being a leader. And some people cannot stand that because they don't have an identity outside of the ego. So if you try to take them out of the egoic realm, they're scared. You might be trying to manipulate me. You might be trying to gaslight me. You might be trying to brainwash me. You might be trying to use me. You might be trying to, right? Because it's so unfamiliar. And so what I do for my audience and for people who choose to listen to my teachings, I try to bring you truth. I do bring you truth from many different perspectives so that you can see for yourself that this actually is a framework. And you can decide for yourself that you want more than what you've been attaching to. Because the kingdom of heaven is not on the Manomaya sheath. wanting to live in the kingdom of heaven, wanting to live according to kingdom principles, which are universal principles that are not of this world, you have to understand that it's not found on that layer. Jesus said it's not going to be here and it's not going to be there. You're not going to be able to see it. Why? Because it's not on the Manomaya. It's not on the shadow level. It's on a higher plane. It's within you. And because you're so focused on what's going on outside and how people are and forming these rules and attaching, you cannot access it. So Jesus said, I have to give you keys. I have to give you keys to the kingdom. Behold, I give you the keys, because you need to understand that all of this stuff that you're seeing and all of this stuff that you're clinging to, the rules and the ideas, that's the Sadducees and the Pharisees, you're clinging to that and you're trying to make yourself righteous by rules. You're trying to attach and justify how you are living. You're trying to do that, but I'm trying to give you access to something more. And so if we look at the Sadducees and Pharisees, they would represent the Manomaya layer, the intellect, the follow the rules, but don't be following the rules for real, but hold other people to the rules, beat yourself up, beat up other people, make them repent, make them whatever. That's the Manomaya. Agree to disagree. The Sadducees and Pharisees were two different sects of church leaders, or temple leaders rather, not the church, who were agreeing to disagree. And they were living together in that. And they happened to come into agreement that this Jesus is a problem, right? So then they focused on that. and Jesus is saying to his audience, the disciples, look at this. This is what happens when you live on this plane, on this realm. This is what happens. Look at it. And you will be just like them if you do that. But I'm calling you higher. My kingdom is not of this world. It's within you. And I'm going to give you the keys to it. And that's why when Peter, remember when Judas had led the authorities to Jesus, Peter went and took out his knife and sliced off the man's ear. And what did Jesus do? He put his ear back on. He says, not time for that. It's not this kind of fight. Because he already told Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world. Because if it was, we would be fighting, but we're not. Because this world is on the Manomaya. Y'all fighting. Y'all want to crucify. Y'all want to ostracize. Y'all want to be better than. Y'all want your identity here. But I'm trying to tell you it's not of this world. And if you knew better, you would ask me. Remember the woman at the well? Let's go to that story. Because this is another illustration of that. Y'all here for this? And then I'm going to go back to the resonance and such. It's all interrelated. Right? Let's see. Woman at the well. I'm thinking of a particular thing that Jesus said to her that lets you know that he's still trying to call her out of the Manomaya. Okay. Let's see. Here it is. Now he had to go through Israel. Now he had to go through Samaria, so he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. The sun was shining bright at noon, right? When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew," separateness, Manomaya, "and I am a Samaritan," Manomaya. "How can you ask me for a drink?" Manomaya logic. Y'all see that? So watch this. Jesus answered her and said, if you knew, if, In other words, I know you don't because I could tell how you're thinking. Because if you were thinking another kind of way, you wouldn't have said that just now. So now that helps me locate who I'm talking to and what the vibration is. This happens in real life too, you know. People are talking and you can locate where they're talking from and what kind of logic rules their system. So he answered her and said, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asked you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. But you are in this monomaya logic. They said, this category, you're this, you're that. But if you were open, if you had another logic, if you had another frequency that wasn't low, you would have said, give me this drink of water. You would have sensed it. You would have said, you're asking me for water, but I need water from you. So look at what happens though. Sir, the woman said. Now, this is after he said, if you knew the gift of God and who it was that was asking you for the water, you would have asked me for water. But she's not off the monomaya layer yet. So she gives some more monomaya logic. Sir, the woman had said, you have nothing to, and it's sir, comma, okay? Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? They're on two different layers. She's talking about this actual water, and he's talking about something that is of a vibration that isn't physical. So you would think that if he replied to her the way that he did, if you knew who was asking you for water, you would ask me for water. You would, if she could come off the monomaya, the egoic plane, and go, well, who are you? Ask questions. What do you mean by who you are? And how could that have benefited me? But she couldn't come off the egoic plane. So she went from her cultural conditioning, you're a Jew, I'm a Samaritan, and then she took it into her literal logic. You don't have nothing to draw water from. How are you going to give me how are you going to give me water? She said, are you greater than our father Jacob? She's trying to logic this out, but her logic is not vibrationally a match for Jesus. And he knows this, right? She's going all into the logic of the monomaya. Do you see this, right? Are you greater than our father Jacob? Now she calls forth a power distance, greater and less. First, it was cultural distance, Jew and Samaritan. Then it was literal logic. You don't have anything to draw from. Now she's bringing it into the power dynamics. Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did all his sons and livestock? And that's what you do on the monomaya. Somebody tells you something. For example, I may say something that is very controversial, like love is not action. And the people on the monomaya layer are going to get upset and start going for their logic. What do you mean? So are you saying that we don't have to show action? Are you saying that they do the same thing? And they probably do it to you too when you try to give a truth that is beyond the monomaya layer. Yes? So what are you saying? Are you saying that we don't have to? No. Or if I say compromise is not necessary in relationships, what do you mean? So you're saying that you're just going to be selfish? You saying they go into all of this, and if it's a group of people, they be looking at one another like, oh, you know, this happens. So he answered. He's trying to give her some higher thinking. Right? Can you see that happening? Oh, compromise. We can't have compromise. Or if I say, Your relationship should not be characterized by forgiveness. And here's why. Oh, forgiveness? You're saying she doesn't want to forgive. She's a perfectionist. She expects everyone to be perfect. That's why she's not in a relationship. You see, are you greater than our Father? That's what's coming. And they do it to you too, and you have experienced this. He said, everyone. So now he's going to address the literal logic. Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. That's proven. You got to keep coming to this water. It's not really soothing your thirst. Yes? So he's appealing to our logic right now. And then he takes it back off the Manomaya. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Hey, sounds. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water, welling to eternal life. Now she comes off the Manomaya. She says, Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here, right? Because he reminded her of the truth of the Manomaya. You keep on doing this, you're going to keep getting the same result. It's going to be a pattern. It's going to be repetitious. It's never going to end. But see, if you listen to this spiritual thing that I'm giving you, Erykah Badu said, I have some food in my bag for you. That type of edible food you eat? No. Food for thought, right? She came straight off that Manomaya like, you are right. I keep doing this every day. In fact, because I'm a woman, I gotta wait for the men to get their water first. And they don't even give me any. And then I gotta get my own water because here it's terribly inconvenient. Here there's classes and segregation and shadow. Here, yes, that's what Jesus was saying when he said, if you drink of this water, you're gonna have to keep coming back. It's gonna be a pattern. You're not coming out of it. It's perpetual because that's the way it is on the Manomaya level. And remember, Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. I'm giving you keys. It's in you. I'm trying to help you become better. But you're telling me about the Jews and the Samaritans, and you're justifying that I don't have anything to get the water from. You're doing all of this. But she came straight off that Manomaya, honey. She said, give me this water. Give me this water. And he said, now, he jumps back on the Manomaya because he realized she's not all the way flushed out. She's not all the way flushed out. She still got some stuff in there. So he goes after the stuff. He says, go call your husband and come back. He's triggering her, touching that trigger button. She said, I have no husband. Back in this day, to not have a husband was a social issue that you had. Thank you. To not have a husband means you're in lack and less than, and you have nothing to build your identity upon. So that's why when you come to this well, you have to sit and wait for the men to take their water first because you're lowly, plus you're a Samaritan, right? So I want to pull all of this out. You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is you have had 5 husbands, and that's seen as a bad thing. It's a social stigma. In fact, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband, while you're telling me that I don't have nothing to draw from, right? You still have all this stuff inside, and I need to draw it out. And so he said, so what you've said is quite true. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews, she back on the Manomaya again. He's not just calling her out, he's calling these constructs out. This is where your identity lies. This is why when you come to this well, you're in shame. I want you to come out of this because I want you to go deeper. So he's not really calling her out, right? He's calling it out into her awareness all of the gunk that keeps her in the Manomaya. And she could get really upset and be like, you're talking to me, but you this, and how dare you say this about me and call me out? Are you perfect? Like, because that's what happens when you trigger people on the Manomaya layer. They lash back out, right? So she tells him again about the Jews and the forefathers and such. And he says, woman, believe me. This is John 4, the 4th chapter. So she bounces back off the Mount of Maya. So she has the revelation, like, sir, give me this water. I see you a prophet. Then she dips back into the Mount of Maya again. You see, so when you're coming off the Mount of Maya layer, you still have some logic in you that keeps you primarily there. You have to go after that logic too. And the way you go after it is when people trigger you. You realize I'm still on this Mount of Maya layer because I'm still worried about how people see me. I'm still worried about whether or not they receive me the way that I want. I'm still here. Right? So let's go on. Woman, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem, because you're talking about the well, you're talking about your forefathers, you're talking about all this Manomaya stuff. But woman, there's coming a time where worship is not going to happen even here, because my kingdom is not of this world, mind you. You Samaritans, now he's going to address her mindset directly. It's a confrontation of the mindset. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. You don't know what you're talking about, but you're standing up and flexing here when I'm really trying to give you this living water. Woman, right? We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. So if you want to be technically, you're trying to use this logic on me, right? But they don't even accept you. Like on the Manomaya, you're still the outcast. But you're sitting here triggered, calling this stuff out. In other words, you're worrying about the wrong thing, but yet a time is coming and has now come. The time is coming and has now come simultaneously. Okay? Stay with me. Stay with me right here. Stay with me right here. A time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. It's not going to happen on this Mount of Maya. While you are drawing out distinctions of ethnicity, culture, rules, religion, intellect, identity, spirituality, while you're doing all that, the time is coming and it has now come. Because I'm talking to you right now. It has now come that I'm drawing your awareness into something deeper, something more profound, something not of this world. And it's in spirit and it's in truth. So remember I told you people on the Manomaya layer, they fuss around the conflict. They don't go beneath the conflict to find out what the universal principle is, the law, where that is in disharmony, reharmonize that, then it's going to be easy to address the conflict or the proposed conflict. And you do it in spirit and in truth, not in Manomaya, not in shadow. The woman said, I know that Messiah is coming. She's going back to what she knows. And it's important on the Manomaya for people to focus on what they know already. He just gave her a lot of information that she could be digging into. But she's going on what she knows. You see how the ego blocks? You have a whole Christ in front of you saying The kingdom of within is within, and I'm trying to give you access to it. I'm trying to give you water. I'm trying to give you something spiritual, and you're worried about this. And not only are you worried about these things, you're going back to what I know. Well, I know. Well, I know. Well, I know. Well, what you know keeps you giving me this logic, and what you know keeps bringing you back to this well over and over again in shame, facing the same things, the patterns. So you can cling to it, woman, or you can come in spirit and in truth with me. All right. So a lot of times we would think, well, she's, she's low vibration, like clinging to all of this. Jew, Samaritan. I know you don't have nothing to draw. She's clinging to all of that. And he's trying to cause her to release it. You have a whole Christ in front of you, and this is what you're doing. Right? The woman said, I know that Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. No questions. He said the time is coming and has now come. And you don't go, what time? What exactly are you talking about? Please tell me. Because you just said some things like you could give me some water that I wouldn't thirst again. And that's conflicting with what I am experiencing. I want to know more. You think she went there? No, she went straight into the ego. And the Messiah is right in front of you. And you're saying, when he comes, he'll explain everything. Then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. Just then the disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. You see, Mama Maya shows back up. You're talking to a woman? You're not supposed to be talking to this woman. She's a harlot. They come straight in on the Mount Maya. Y'all see that? They just jump straight in. They're not even thinking. This is Christ in front of you. And you're talking about he's talking to a woman. This is Christ. So, but no one asks. Sometimes, hold on a second. It says, they returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman, but no one asked, what do you want? Why are you talking to her? There's no questioning. You just go straight into the autopilot in the pattern. You don't ask a question. Master, Jesus, Christ, why are you talking to this woman? It's said that we're not even supposed to talk to her. She's a Samaritan. You're a Jew. She's a woman. Why are you doing this? Right. But they don't ask. Sometimes you think because you don't ask, because you think you can think something, but because you didn't express it, then it's okay. See, they're spiritual looking. They don't ask. Because they probably, if you think into the human mind, they don't want to ask a dumb question. They don't want to be seen a certain way, so they present themselves properly, right? Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to town and said to people, she came back off the Mount Maya, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. But then she jumps back on it. Could this be the Messiah? She's going to ask the other people now. She didn't sit there and inquire in this story about nothing deep he said. She just formed an opinion, went back on what she's been taught, and went back to the people who taught it to her and asked their opinion. She went back to the people who agree with her cultural mindsets and constructs and her identity in the collective. She went back to them. She had the whole Christ in front of her, where she could have asked some real deep questions. She went and asked them. Meanwhile, the disciples urged him, eat something. They want to minister to his physical body. He's in another plane right now with that woman from that interaction. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. She's talking about, you need water, you don't have anything to draw. Y'all trying to bring me food. You didn't ask no question. They could have went into a real deep discussion. Could you imagine having someone like Christ in front of you and you don't engage in a deep discussion because your ego, the Manomaya, makes you get offended, makes you say, I know this already, and want to impress or look spiritual, so just be quiet. Hey, tomboy, you have a whole Christ in front of you, woman. And you run back to the people who have put you in this position and given you this social identity to ask them, is he the one? Then the disciples said to each other, could someone have brought him food? They are so clueless. But if you know who you have in front of you, you wouldn't be sitting there doing that. You would ask him and let him tell you. Listen, a whole Neo is in front of them and they're going, did somebody bring him food? They said to each other. They didn't even say it to him. In other words, they're saying, I don't understand because we know you didn't eat. I don't understand what you're talking about. At this point, they still don't see that he's living in two realms, right? Then Jesus said, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and finish his work. Don't you have a saying? It's still 4 months until harvest. He's trying to get on their level to help them understand. Don't you say this? Well, it's the same way in the spiritual realm. Remember, we went over the Hermetic principles and it said that the laws correspond on every plane. So he's relating it to the physical plane so that they can understand. Don't you have a saying? It's still 4 months until harvest. I'm trying to do something. You walked up, you saw me talk to the woman. You didn't ask me. She didn't ask me. I'm trying to help y'all. Y'all up in the ego telling me about the culture and the rules. And I'm trying to give you some life, some eternally satisfying life. And you're talking to me about this. And so don't you have a saying that says 4 months until harvest? I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest. In other words, it's time. It is coming and has now come. Even now, the one who reaps draws a wage and harvests a crop for eternal life, so that the sower and the reaper may be glad together. Thus, the saying, one sows and another reaps is true. I sent you to reap what you have not worked for. Others have done the hard work, and you have reaped the benefits of their labor. He's trying to talk to them in phraseology that they understand, in analogies that they understand. But he's talking about a spiritual principle, and they're still talking about who fed him. Right? Many of the Samaritans from that town believed him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I did. Now, they believed that because he told me everything I did. All a person really has to do is give you some psychic information when you're on the Manomaya and you're like, oh my God, she's a prophet. Oh my God, he's a prophet. Oh my God. They believed because of that. Now, she didn't go telling them about the water, the living water. She didn't go telling them about how this prophet is talking to me and he's really not supposed to, and he's talking about something that I don't understand. Can y'all come see what he's saying? No. They believe that she said, he told me everything I ever did. But that's a start. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. So that's okay, because that was a drawing point. They came and sat down at least. Okay. They said to the woman, we no longer believe because of what you said. Now we have heard it for ourselves. And we know that this man is really the Savior of the world. They had to come off of the manomaya, away from someone else's testimony, away from the psychic appeal, into the spirituality of it. My kingdom is not of this world. And I'll stop right there because we could go on and on about that. So I hope that something I said here inspired you to come off of manomaya logic and thinking and identification. And when I say come off, I don't think it's a one and done. I think this is a spiritual practice of transcending. And we inhabit our wisdom body more and more and more until we're there more often than the manomaya. But we still need to have access to the manomaya. Jesus did. Jesus had to understand what the people were thinking so he could actually speak to it. He said, you Samaritans, you worship what you don't know, but we worship what we do know, the Jews. He had to know what their manomana logic was in order to help them out of it. He had to know what their rules are. He said, don't y'all have a saying that says this? He had to know to speak their language. And we can see that there were some disciples that followed him with a true belief. There were some that were like, I don't know about this, because when he started telling me about myself, I don't like it. And then there was Judas, who was just like, you know what? I don't believe nothing he's saying. In fact, I want this money and they want him. So let me go ahead and sell out. He had all kinds of disciples. All of them were not for him. Some of them were in the beginning stages of knowing. They didn't grow up until after the crucifixion and resurrection. Some received Christ consciousness through gnosis, like Saul being struck down by lightning and becoming Paul. So we have a lot of opportunities and ways to come to know the kingdom of heaven that is within, going back to that original point. The kingdom of heaven is within, but it's not on the realm of the manomaya, and you can't access it from there. So little by little in your spiritual practice, allow yourself to be relieved and released of manomaya logic. How? When you get offended, instead of saying the person is like this and the person is like that, we can describe what a person is like, but you must go beyond that into the frequencies of resonance. Now, let me jump back there. Can we jump back in there so we can finish this up? So now let's go beyond the manomaya into some logic that helps us at least get one step out of it. Okay? When you're relating to people, there are 9 divisions of self. In Kemetic spirituality, we went over the 9 divisions of self as well. Okay, so resonance is not alignment. The disciples were aligned with Christ, but they all did not resonate. Okay, so emotional resonance. This is going through the 9 divisions of self and where resonance needs to happen to come out of shadow, manomaya, dominant connections. Okay, emotional resonance. Shared emotional safety. If you don't have shared emotional safety, openness, support, and empathy, you're going to have shadow dominance in that relationship. So you can fuss about, you don't hear my feelings, you don't, whatever. Or you could say, all right, after you said all that, we're having low emotional resonance here. Is there a way to create shared safety. You see, we're talking about resonance, not how you can make me feel safe and what you need to do and all of that stuff. That's manomaya, and that's fine. Talk about it. But then you must go a layer beneath that into how can we harmonize emotionally? Can we harmonize emotionally? What does that look like? And submit that to some universal truth, not subjective truth. Is this making sense? Do you need it to be more practical, or can you take it in this form? Because I don't mind breaking it down. All Manomaya relationships have the same qualities. Whether it starts off really good or starts off tumultuous, it's going to end up having the same experiences because those experiences are found on the Manomaya. Do you need it to be more practical, or are you good with this? Okay, next. Sensual resonance. Do we resonate? Not do we align with ideas. This is deeper. This is, do we resonate sensually with physical affection and shared sensory preferences and presence? Do we resonate? Are we feeling one another deeply, or are we having deep problems there? Deep problems means there's low to no resonance. So we can come off of, you don't touch me, you don't kiss me, you don't hug me. Are we in sensual resonance? Next, ego resonance. Ideas of mutual respect, identity affirmation, self-expression. Do we resonate here? Not do we align here. Do we resonate? Meaning, as we interact, do we experience harmony here? And if we don't, let's look on this layer of mutual respect, identity affirmation, self-expression, and see if we resonate. Next. Sexual resonance, chemistry, sexual openness, creative polarity. Is there a dance? Is there a flow that we resonate with? Or is there disunion, disharmony, dissonance? So we could fuss about we don't have sex enough. Or you could look at, okay, we're in the shadow quality of this here. We're not resonating deeply. Is there a way to come into more resonance versus you this and you that and you? People on the Manomaya, they want to focus on behavior, not truth, not resonance. Resonance is where the real resolution happens. Image resonance, shared values on image, lifestyle, appearance, or reputation. You don't like the way somebody talked to you in public, let's say. So you go back and forth. You shouldn't address me like that in public. I felt embarrassed or whatever. And the person is saying, I felt that was fine. You shouldn't have did this. We can go back and forth on that. Well, that's your truth. Well, it's my experience. You're going to have to just table that and forget it happened, or try to forget it happened, because on the Manomaya, you can't overcome that. But if you look on the layer deeply, and see, that's why you need forgiveness so much on the Manomaya. You need forgiveness so much on the Manomaya because you can't resolve anything. And the only way to keep going with people is to forgive. It's the only way. And the majority of people, I've read to you out of all the books, it says the average person is on the Manomaya layer in their relationships within themselves. Their logic submits to it. Their reasoning submits to it. The way they see, behave, their actions, their characteristics and qualities submit to the Manomaya layer. And so that's why you have to forgive so much, Because there's my truth and my experience, and you didn't validate it. And yes, I did. No, you didn't. And you don't understand me, and I don't feel understood. All of that is on the Manomaya layer. So then you have to break it with forgiveness or grace or something and say something like, you know what? What's important to me is that I love you and I want to be close to you. Can we just hug and try to move past this? That's sweeping it under the rug, and that rug keeps growing and growing, that lump. And then you have to keep forgiving. And then if it keeps coming up, you say, I didn't forgive. So you go back to trying to forgive. And then you say, well, I have to give grace to myself. And then you keep giving grace to yourself. And you keep hitting the pattern. You're like the woman at the well. You keep coming back. But you don't like it when I tell you that none of this needs to happen. It's not normal. It's just normal on Manomaya. Image resonance, we went over that. No, image resonance. Shared value on image, lifestyle, appearance, or reputation. We could go back and forth and fuss about why you talking to your friends about us. You shouldn't be talking to your friends about us. That makes me look bad. Or I want to save money and you want to spend it. I want to live here and you want to live there. Oh, we have to agree to disagree. It's Manomaya. And when I talk to a person with this kind of logic, I let it be because I know that this is what the broadcast is, right? And you have to know it too. I'm bringing this out so you can know it, so you can see it within yourself and others. Because on the Manomaya layer, if you don't participate, they call you things like distant, cold, uncaring, harsh, and things like that because you don't participate. And then when you are looking in the Manomaya layer, they feel irrational, unintelligent, immature, right? Because you're looking from different perspectives. And some people are at the highest Manomaya layer of their circle. So they're used to being the one, the Christ of their circle, right? But realize that there's a bigger circle where there's another Christ, and a bigger circle where there's another Christ, and a larger circle where there's another. So when I get into for example, when I get into my group coaching programs with my coach, he's the Christ there. He is. Am I saying that nothing he says needs to be contested? No, but he's the one enlightening. So if I walk in there with my ego, I'm Veronica Marie, I'm a coach already. I know this. Yes, I know that. Yes, then I can't benefit from the water that he's offering. And if I sit there and get offended by what he's saying, I can't benefit. So when I go and sit in his presence and in his teaching platform, I bring my openness. I bring my realization that he can give me something that I don't already have. It doesn't matter if I'm familiar with the topic. It doesn't matter if I've studied it. Don't you know a person could give you one word that you never thought of before and change your whole existence? So if I go in there and I watch people going in there in their ego, hey Naya, they get offended, they go away, then they learn and they come back and say, you know, I was mad at you. I watch it happen on all layers, even in my own life. This is how it is. But what if I'm telling you it doesn't have to be that way? Next, number 7, intellectual resonance. This is real right here. Mental stimulation, shared curiosity, idea flow. Sometimes you do not have harmony with people intellectually, but you may have some kind of sensual resonance, or you might have some kind of emotional resonance. But when it comes to intellect, there is no resonance. So you might be saying they're not trying to learn. They don't want better. It sounds like that. But really, if you come on the layer I love it, Naya. If you come on the layer beyond that argument, you can say, okay, intellectually, I'm experiencing low resonance. Do we really resonate here? And that's not personal in terms of you're not enough and all of this stuff. That's Manomaya. There is recognizing how the energy is flowing. The energy is impeded here. Let's be real. Social resonance, friendship dynamics, social belonging, shared circles. When you have low social resonance, your relationship is dominated by the shadow. You fuss about how much time someone spends with their friends or what they say with their friends and tell their friends, and you don't like their friends and things of that nature. It's low resonance. So maybe you need to find deeper resonance with someone who has a friend group or a friendship set up that makes more harmony within your inner being. I don't know where we got this idea. Well, I do know where we got this idea from, where if you decide to be with someone that you can't vibrate out of resonance. Next, the last one, motivational resonance, shared vision, life goals, direction, and willpower. You could try to drag a person with you. You can try to keep giving them the truth, although they resist it, like the woman at the well. You could. But you're going to experience low resonance. That energetic current is going to be topsy-turvy because you have to keep coming back to a reset point. Going back to emotional resonance. Emotional resonance is super important. Have you ever just met a person and you like them, right? And liking them is enough because you're getting to know them, right? And I've experienced this, but they're traveling on a different trajectory. They're falling in love, but you are in like, and you're growing to admire them and you're getting to know. So you don't have emotional resonance. I've learned not that long ago that this is problematic. So you can keep trying to reset. But if you look at the deeper layer, there is disharmony on emotional resonance layer. So the question will be, how can we get in harmony? Is it possible? And it's usually going to be the person who is feeling the intensity to taper down. Usually that's how it is. Because if you're in love with someone, they can't just jump up to being in love with you, right? So you got to taper your expectations and stuff to a point where you can exist in harmony. But if that keeps creating disharmony within you because you want something that the person is not offering, then we got to talk about emotional resonance, not talk about, oh my God, you don't love me. I can't believe this. I'm so stupid. Look at emotional resonance. Are we resonating? This is on the energetic layer. So I'm trying to take you off of Manomaya into the layers beyond the Manomaya so you can start experiencing the wisdom sheath more and more and more. We all are on different layers and different levels of this life, and we get to decide what we transcend and what patterns we stay in. We get to decide. Every time something is brought to our awareness and we let the ego cause offense or resist or run away or something like that, then we get to decide where we're going to be. And that is fine. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It is how it is. It's the lay of the land. Right? The thing that distinguishes humans from other sentient beings is we get to choose to come out of the vibration. A rock cannot choose to come out of the density of the rock and be water. Not on this room. It must vibrate higher on another realm of some sort, but not on this realm. So other forms of sentience, consciousness, they can't choose, but we get to choose. We're not stuck on one layer. Ashe, we're not stuck. We're never stuck. And that's it. I'm done. Y'all have a beautiful, beautiful creation. Nope, before I go, tell me, does something about this inspire you? King of Hearts, thank you so much. Was something about this inspirational to you? Something that caused you to see life a little bit different? Um, Caused you to come into a greater, deeper practice? Yes, good. That's the goal. I'm never trying to tell someone how they should think. I'm giving them options so that they have the freedom of choice. You could choose. Choose ye this day, right? Deeper understanding, confirmation. Good. Ashe. All right, so I'm going because y'all know I'll stay and talk even longer. I'm going to put this video on YouTube so you can go back and reference it. Hey, Play, how you doing? Helped me make things clear where it was great. Ashe. I'm happy about that. Yes, clarity. All right, until next time, let it be well with you and enjoy your creation. You're welcome, Play. Human rights govern, you're welcome. But intellectual emotion, good.